Welcome to our third session of GenAIMS, our Gen AI, Generative AI Makerspace training. Happy to see some new names today, as well as some returnees. Let us know in the chat where you're joining from and how you've been. Okay, let us know in the chat. Jeff is joining. Okay, you guys were typing. You guys were typing. No big deal. Okay, good. Good to see you, Victor. Glad you're here. Hi, Austin. Sorry that you're busy. It's a busy time. It's springtime. The flowers are almost blooming, and there's a lot for teachers to do. So we appreciate you making the time to come today. Hi, Dina. Hello. Hi. Okay, so we are in session 3. The name of today's session is Taking It to the Classroom. So we've been kind of chipping away at our use of generative AI, applying it to some different challenges in adult education. And today we want to focus a little bit on like, okay, I've used generative AI to generate this content. Now what? Oh, cool. Sorry. Chat. Going to the chat to see what people are saying. Oh, good, Gareth. Yes, I'm excited too. We will be in Texas next week for the Cohort conference. I hope to maybe see some of you there. So we're in our third session. Our team is the same. Jeff and I will be facilitating today's session. Ebony is here with us to support. And Jen and Justine are 2 of our amazing team members who are going to be taking the work that we all do together and evaluating it and seeing what insights we can extract into the potential and limitations of AI for adult education. Today's agenda, we're going to be doing a show and tell. So I hope maybe some people came with their homework from session 2 and are ready to share with us what you worked on and what you think of what you were able to develop. We'll also talk a little bit about evaluating generative AI outputs. And then we'll look at how do we design activities that are learner ready, and going into our next steps. And at the end of today's session, after we describe to you what the next steps are, what the homework is, and what our final session is all about, we will have an opportunity. We've left some time today for there to be 2 breakouts. One to review if you've missed some of the content or you haven't gotten caught up on the assignments or you need help with some of the stuff we've already covered. You can go into a review breakout or a dive deeper. So that'll be to prepare you more to tackle the homework that is ahead of you, and dive deeper into our concepts from today. As a reminder, this is where we are in our schedule. So we've completed our first 2 sessions. We're in the third session where our focus is on exploring different ed tech tools to deliver learning resources and developing a classroom-ready resource to showcase by the end of, not the end of today's session, but in your homework from today's session. That will be your focus in preparation for our last session together, which is on April 9th. Yes, we will record both breakouts. So if you are having trouble choosing, don't stress it. Go to the one that makes the most sense for where you are right now. Are you getting caught up? Are you ready to dive into the next task? And then you can always go and look at what was covered in the other breakout. So by the end of today's session, our objectives are to be able to define and apply criteria for quality teaching materials. We started looking at that criteria last time. We'll continue today. We will examine AI-generated content for learner readiness Explain and apply strategies that consider the affordances of various ed tech tools in developing teaching materials. So we're going to actually look at, once we generate that content using AI and we put it into the different digital tools that we would use with learners, what are some of the pros and cons to those different tools? As a reminder, every session ends with a workbook assignment, and every workbook assignment ends with an exit ticket. And once you fill out that exit ticket, that's how Jeff and I know that you are all done with that section in your workbook. So this will be your last workbook section. I hope that you will be able to complete it and fill out that exit ticket for us. And of course, you can always feel free to go back to the recordings and get caught up on any of the content we've already covered, and catch up before April 9th. We welcome you to do that. We hope that you'll do that if you had to miss some sessions. And keep an eye out. We'll be posting in the COP the link to your workbooks, session recordings, the session slides, and Ryan's going to explain to us at the end of today's session how to submit your task in the PD portal to make sure you get PD credit for doing your workbook assignments. Workbook assignment. Your workbook assignments. So yes, this is the process. After today, do your workbook, do the exit ticket, and submit that task. We want to make sure that you get credit for that for sure. So a little recap of our last session, we looked at an AI integration framework that covered these different areas that are especially critical when we're thinking about integrating AI into learning environments. Being AI capabilities and learning goals. So where can AI do something that actually benefits learning? Mitigating biases. So we know that AI has baked in bias, and what are strategies for mitigating that? Ethics and data use. AI is data hungry. And so what does the ethical and responsible use of AI look like? Ease of use, how accessible is it for learners to use AI tools in the way that we have set them up for them in the learning experience? Evidence of impact, how do we know that tools work for our learners? And human oversight and over-reliance, which is super critical in AI integration. And it's the reason that we're focusing so much on this evaluation criteria and really thinking about, as the human element, the teacher element, what is our role? What should we be looking for? We have these amazing tools that automate processes that help us generate things for our learners so much faster than we could before. And so then what does it look like for us to really have oversight and evaluate those things and make sure that we're still delivering high quality learning? And so that brings us into the evaluation criteria that we'll be applying to the AI generated output, but not just AI generated output. We'll also be thinking about the final product. So as a reminder, we kind of looked a little bit at this last time, and we'll dive deeper into it this time. And it's 5 key criteria for evaluating educational resources, which are credibility, relevance, learning and support features, ease of use, and openness. And so we'll talk today about how the credibility and the relevance really come to play when we're talking about content, when we use AI to generate the content of the learning, and is that content credible? Is the content relevant? And then the last 3, Jeff will explain later, is more around the delivery of that content. When it goes into learners' hands, what features do they have to meaningfully engage with it? How do they access it? And is it open for them to access and for even other educators to access and reuse? So that brings us to today, and we're starting today with a show and tell. Just like last time, we want you to show us what you did in your homework assignment and tell us what you thought of what you were able to produce using generative AI tools. Before we get into that, I wanted to share how you can share chatbot links to your chatbot conversations in different tools, because we noticed as we were clicking into the workbooks that some of the links I think were copied from the address bar, and the conversations hadn't been made publicly viewable yet. So just wanted to let you guys know in different tools it works a little bit differently, but there's usually this feature where you can share. In Gemini, it's actually right at the end of the output. There's that three, like that little almost triangle with the three nodes that usually is an icon used for sharing. And when you click on that, you have a few options. In Gemini, you can share the conversation, which will give you a link that you can share. So in the workbook, that's what you would do. Or you can export your output to Docs, Google Docs, or you can even export it to Gmail. So if you've drafted an email and you want to go ahead and just send it or go into Gmail and edit it, that's another option. So when you're in your workbook, if you're trying to share something from Gemini, make sure you click on that share button and share conversation. If you're using the Copilot browser chatbot, there is no option to share that if you're just using that for free. If Copilot is embedded in other tools you use, then you'll have to think creatively about how to share Copilot outputs. And then in ChatGPT there and in Claude, it's up at the top right-hand corner, there's a share button. So in ChatGPT, you'll share and create link. And then in Claude, you will share and enable public view. Okay? Any questions about that? I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and show you that process before we get into show and tell, so that if you're doing show and tell, you can share a link if you have a chatbot conversation you want others to see. So I'm getting in here to my ChatGPT combo.
There's a question from
And
Austin.
there
Austin,
is, okay.
is your question about sharing now, like as we're about to do this, or related to sharing your chat with others
Sharing with others right now on the system.
in Zoom?
Yes,
Yeah, you'll be able to click share and then select what window or tab that you want, or your entire screen.
because
That
I use Chat GTP or GPT.
Right. So that, I mean, well, if you want to, if you're sharing with us like right now, like like you're going to walk through what you did, that's a Zoom thing and you'll be able to share your window. If you're sharing your thread, like your chat in the workbook or in the chat, if you want to do that, you'd be using that button that you can see on the top right-hand corner of Rachel's screen right now, because that's what actually generates the shareable link. What I think a lot of people have been doing is copying the URL from their address bar, and that makes sense in most cases. That works for other things, but in this case, you actually have to generate a link using that share button.
Yeah,
Oh,
so let me show that. So there's this link up here in my browser that is not the share link, right? And then if I'm actually in the ChatGPT window, there is a share button here. And I have already made this link public, so it wouldn't say update, it would say probably create. But it is good to know that even if you continue to have a conversation on that topic and you've shared a link to it in the past, and then you want to share the rest of the conversation, you can actually update the link. And that gives you that copyable link here that others can actually view the conversation with.
Uh,
I'll put that in the
I'm,
chat.
I have not created an account in Chat GPT, so I do not have
Okay.
a share button.
Okay, yeah, so you would have to create a link. I mean, sorry, create an account in order to
Well,
share the
I
conversation.
don't know that I can. I checked and $20 a month is out of my range.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, in the workbook, that's why we gave the option of either share it, like share the link, or share the content. So you can also just copy whatever you created and paste it into that document. Okay?
Okay, I've got a whole long stuff, so I'm just asking.
yep.
Okay. Yeah, however you can share it with us. No problem. We certainly don't expect everyone to, pay a premium for anything. Um, okay, so yes, that's how you share from this window. I'm checking the chat if there are any other questions. Doesn't look like it. So what you're seeing here is an image that I generated using ChatGPT. And this was the final product. And as a little warm up for today on evaluating AI content, I wanted you guys to take a look at this picture and play a little what's wrong with this image game with me. So if you can find your Zoom annotation tools, oh, enable annotation for others. Okay, I just enabled it. So you guys should be able to see annotate. You can pick up your annotate and look at this picture closely. See if you can find any weirdness, inaccuracies. I I find this child crossing the street well ahead of his parents a little strange as a mom. I don't like that. What else can you find in this picture? Okay, I see people circling hands. Let me see, I have to move my toolbar here. Yes, an empty stroller in the middle of the road is quite unusual. Okay, yes, we see the little girl with four legs, a bus that says safe on it. What else are we seeing? Oh yeah, the bus is like not going on the road. I think someone's indicating. Wow, you guys are good with annotate. Oh, good catch with the lights. Hipster. Pretty good. Okay. So today we'll be talking pattern clashing. Okay, someone's being funny. So today we'll be talking about evaluating, AI outputs. And this picture is a great example of how AI can produce things that on the surface look really good. I used this image because I didn't need it to be perfect or accurate to decorate a slide. So I definitely used it. It served my purpose and it was fine. But when we take a closer look, and when accuracy really counts, we are able to find some little problems that AI produces, sometimes big problems. So it's really important to take a closer look, and that's what we'll be diving in on together today. Before we get into that, maybe the kid in the road, I'm looking at Ashley's comment in the chat, maybe the kid in the road belongs to the empty stroller. And then hopefully we move the stroller out of the road. That would be nice. So before we dive into all of these, ooh, that's looking fun, elements of evaluating AI outputs, let me clear this. I would love to go ahead. Oh, thank you, someone who did that. I would love to go ahead and get into our show and tell. So would love to have a couple of volunteers who finished their workbook share with us what differentiated outputs they were able to produce. So what did you create? What aspect of differentiation were you focused on? Language, level, interest, and relevance? And what do you think of the result? So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and wait to see if we have a volunteer.
Rachel, this is Denise.
Hey, Denise, you want to share?
Hi. Yeah, I can show. I was pleasantly surprised by what I got. It's not perfect. I didn't format the way I want it because I wanted to show people what was produced and explain how I would format it a little bit differently, but I can can go ahead and share, right? So I have a lot of
Yeah, I
stuff up
think,
on my, let me
are you
get
able
stuff
to?
off of my. Oh, okay, hold on. Sorry, I got too much stuff up. I don't think you want to see all this stuff before I share. I get all of that up, but I do have my, let's see, where was I look? I brought these two up right now, so it won't take long to find them. So I'm going to go to my sharing and start that. So guys, I looked for ESL, and it's something that we're working on anyway. I'm working with the teachers we're at Community Action, and we're implementing a lot of workplace readiness. And the one that I decided to do was the cover letter, because it's some more advanced. What we're looking at, we're using something, we're partnering with Upwardly Global. And as a partner, we can get in and the students can do this online work, but not all of our students qualify because they have to be a college graduate from their own country. So we're looking at things to supplement or substitute for students that can't get into that program, or who are, and we also have students at lower levels because we have ESL professionals. Maybe the students qualify, but their English is just not there yet where they can understand. So I wanted to scaffold some of the material that they had and use it as alternative material for the same lesson plan. So,
Hey, Denise,
sorry,
real
I'm not
quick.
sharing it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was wondering if you were sharing
Yeah.
it, but you're not. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't share the first time. I don't know why. Okay. Okay, here we go. So that's just a little background. Now we can look at it. So the original, this is the original document that I had. And I liked it. We liked it. The students, some of the students, the advanced students have worked with this. And it talks about a cover letter guide. And it gives them a nice template to use and tells them what to write in each paragraph. And then on the next page, it gives them an example, which is the only thing I even noticed an error in their stuff, because here they put a name. This is the name of the person, right? It should be like Jane Doe or something like that, because at the end, they say it's from Jane Doe. And that could be very confusing to an ESL student, let me tell you. So that's something we noticed in the actual material that we need to, that I let teachers know about. But they have a nice, but this is very advanced English. I mean, this is at our highest level. But I really like here, they have where they could work and they could do the different parts and work on this together with their teacher. And then they have a step-by-step checklist where they can check everything. Okay, and I'll show you what I did. I went to Diff. You want me to go and show them? It's called Diffit.
Yeah.
And what I did, I uploaded this PDF file. I just had to upload it. And I asked it to produce something at about a 4th grade reading level. I didn't say English as a second language because I noticed even on ChatGTP, English as a second language doesn't always get me the level of language I'm looking for. But I will tell people you have to be careful, because if you say 4th grade level, sometimes ChatGTP, for example, will put in examples with kids' toys or games that's not appropriate for adults. So you have to kind of, I think you always have to check the output. And I think I've always had to change something. I mean, I'm always changing something. So this is what I got. And I really like this site because it does exercises for you that give students practice with reading comprehension, vocabulary, things like that. So it took that and it gave it, but I want you to see I figured this out. When it has 2 stars, that means it's like a level 1 heading. So if I can't actually edit it right now because I'm not in the right account to do that. But this should be like bolded and left justified to make it easier for students to see the outline. When you see anything that like this goes underneath it, your name, your address, your phone number, your email address, the date. So I would reformat this in a better outline. But as I look through this, I really like the level of language, that it was easy. Tell the person who's hiring that you want the job. Say the job you want, where you saw it. It's simple language that these students at maybe, let's say, high beginner, low intermediate, they're going to be able to do fine with this. Okay. And then the check mark, they have, I like this right here is the check mark, checklist. I would probably use that other checklist or just try to modify that checklist itself, because I like that if you look at this cover letter guide, the checklist is much more comprehensive. So I might just with ChatGPT, either with Diffit or some other thing, just try to take this language here and maybe simplify it a little bit. I really enjoy these AI tools in trying to simplify language, because something that I've had to do my whole life myself, right? And it's so much easier. So I would reformat this, possibly expand this, the checklist. And I like the idea of making it a separate page. This is the checklist after you're finished. But I love it. It gives a reading summary, and I could like let students come up like to orally summarize themselves, and then we could see what I have right on the paper. And then it has vocabulary that we could go through before, after, however it's good to work in. Multiple choice questions, just comprehension questions on what to do. And then it has short answer questions. I love that all this stuff's already here. Open-ended question for discussion or writing. A lot in my ESL classes, probably at this level, I would do a lot more oral. And then after we do the oral, I would help them write it down if they need help. So I really, really thought that Diffit did a good job. There's not a whole bunch I would have to change before I would use this or give it to a teacher to use. So I was impressed by it. I like it better than what I've gotten on, if anybody's used Brisk. I like this better because this is, Brisk is super, super oriented for K-12 more. I do use Brisk, but I really like this. And so I'm going to probably use Diffit more in the future. I'm going to try it with different things. And if you pay and you get a professional, you can get all sorts of handouts. You can get graphic organizers. Like for me, if it's a site that's worth it, I would just pay on my own money. Teachers shouldn't have to do that, but we all know we end up doing it anyway, because it does save us time, and it makes the quality of what we do, I think, improves it. So there's reasons. And I think, well, so, and it might be worth it if you're at somewhere, I don't know how much they charge for school-wide or licensing kind of thing, but I was very impressed with the quality of this compared to other things I've used. So I'll stop talking.
Thank you for sharing. What questions do you guys have for Denise? Some great points coming up here about appropriateness for adults. Gareth is sharing about Magic School AI. Adults who aren't in university or professional level language. So like adult literacy is usually the one learner population that is missing from every tool. That was Diffit, Austin. The tool was Diffit, and
Diffit,
how
yeah.
appropriate that in our differentiation task that Diffit is specifically for, or was originally designed specifically for differentiation. They have a lot of other features now, so I wouldn't say it's just for that, but it certainly is super helpful in that it was originally designed to do that. Cool. Yeah, it was nice to see. Thank you, Denise. Do we have another volunteer?
I did. This is Austin.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen and show us what you did in the homework.
I'm going to basically what I did is I used GPT to come up with I'm doing problems with I'm going to go up to the very beginning of this real quickly. what I started to do is I just asked the question, create 10 linear equations to be solved by at the ninth grade level students. And they gave me some good things, and I actually used them in class today. The problem is that even though I used them in class, I had, you know, I don't have, I did a copy of that and pasted it into Word, and this is what I got. Instead of a nice, beautiful copy of this, I've actually got the equation written 3 times, so I had to edit it like this to fix it so that I could share with my students. And so that's one thing I did not like about what was going on, and it may be because I'm using the free version. But so everything I did. Now I did go in and refine it a little bit. I said I want the solutions, and they showed the solutions as if the students were at a level where they could do the work, much of the work mentally. But a lot of the students I have trouble doing arithmetic mentally and stuff like that. So they need a little bit more things. So I told them to showing the algebraic properties, and it did a very good job of that, but it still didn't show everything that I would like to see in doing this. And now I did this sort of at the last minute because, like I said, had been very, very busy and so forth like that. But I was, you know, I do like the fact what they said, add 4 to both sides, and that's the addition property of equality. I just would have liked to see where it said 4x minus 4 plus 4 equals 12 plus 4 and stuff like that. So I think that, but like I said, I mean, this is the free version, and maybe the new version where you have to pay for it has corrected this problem about multiple images of the same thing. I don't have as nice a presentation as the previous person, but this did give something that something to look at, and I do not like the fact that I have to edit so much of what I put out. And now ChatGTP, I asked it to do it to a PDF. It said it could not do it to a PDF, but you could do it to Microsoft Word and like that, and copy and paste, and that did not work very well at all either.
Yeah. So I do have a tip for that, Austin. Thank you for sharing. This is great. You know, one thing I think too is just creating an account. Well, probably it does free you up in terms of being able to do a little bit more, even if you just have a free account. So I just want to mention that. And I think, you know, it's great that you found a way to generate some exercises that could be useful, and with further going back and forth, you even, you know, got the solutions. Now, my tip for I think Denise mentioned the stars, Austin mentioned the wonky pasting. One thing, if you're using Google Docs, that you can do to make the copy over from a goodness, I can't speak today, to make it make the copy paste process more not have like all that weird formatting, is to go to tools and preferences. And what you want to do here is enable markdown. So if you've ever like just copied and pasted and you get all those like asterisks in all your text and it looks really weird. If you enable markdown, then when you go to copy and paste, well, first let me get this away. You can paste from Markdown, and it's going to keep all of that formatting intact when you paste it over. So hopefully that helps
Well, that would
with that.
help.
I was very happy to learn that tip when I did.
Well, that would help, but I'm kind of old school. I have not really learned how to use Google Docs that much yet because
Yeah, and I think there is an equivalent in Word. I just don't use Word a lot. So, you know, go into maybe the help or do a Google search and see how you copy and paste from ChatGPT into Word. There are plenty of YouTube videos and instructions on how to do that too. I just don't have that off the top of my head. I'm sure Jeff is finding the answer right now. I can see the look on your face is I'm finding the answer. Okay. Do we have any other volunteers? I think maybe one more would be great.
Oh, this is Gareth. I can share some of the things that I was looking at. Let's see here. So I've been thinking about conversation classes because that was one of those things that I would get asked to do when I was teaching ESL programs. And it's one of those things that I always felt like I could find ways to do better. And so I was looking at some speaking skills content standards, and I remember really liking the Teaching Skills That Matter toolkit. And so I found this lesson on unmet workplace performance outcomes and thinking, okay, this would be something that's very relevant to to some of the students that I was working with. I was working with a group of students who were at a company that makes wheelchair accessible vans. They take vans and they add wheelchair accessibility. And all of the students who were in that class were specifically there to learn enough English so that they could become managers. So this would be a great topic for them. But a lot of them did not have the best English vocabulary yet. So I was thinking, okay, can we use something like this lesson plan to and create some differentiation so I can have maybe a group of students practicing conversation that are at lower levels and then sort of in the intermediate level. This one is meant for high intermediate to advanced ESL. So I was like, okay, can we set this up so that so that it can be at different levels? So I asked ChatGPT to, I fed it the content standards that I wanted. And I gave it some instructions on how I wanted it to target a certain level of ESL. I went to a book that detailed what different levels of ESL should be able to do. And I said, okay, read this and tell me what it is. And then based on this, adjust this lesson to meet certain levels. And so this was the output that it provided. So first I asked it to do, let's see, low intermediate ESL. And one of the things that I noticed right up the front is that it has some advice right at the beginning about how to make things a little bit simpler for low intermediate students. So like changing some of the vocabulary from after careful consideration to we think. And I think that there's some value there in simplifying the language and making that pretty explicit right up to the front. I noticed that it preserved the time limit recommendations in all of the different parts of the activity. My screen is sharing, right? Okay.
Yes, we see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it gives some assessment modifications. One of the things that stood out to me is because the original lesson plan used, let's see, where does it describe ideal? Okay, yeah, it describes the ideal process, the ideal strategy with intentionally and develop and explore and anticipate and look. And it's prerogative to make the language simpler kind of removes the identifying letters from all of the parts of ideal. So it doesn't say what the I means anymore. It removes what the D means. It just kept the simplified question. And so its pursuit of simplification almost removes it from what it's trying to do. It's from what it was originally. It gets, I think when yeah, we get to this example here, it becomes almost too simple. So see broken toy, toy no work. Find tape, tape toy, toy good. That that doesn't feel right. I think it
It does
got
not
a
feel
little
right.
silly. Um, I did I do think that some of this recommendation about how to adjust is valuable, but it does still feel like there's a lot of um, it's still going to be something you need to really adjust with. So Gemini has some value in like giving you some guidance on how to adjust and differentiate, but it's not going to give you something that you can just deploy. Um, I went back and tried using Magic School AI, um, and when I gave it my initial prompt, it gave me a starting outline, but it didn't really give me anything that I could actually work with until I prompted it to give me more things to actually work with. And then it gave me scripts, and I was like, oh, hey, this is I like this script. This script is too complicated. Can you simplify it? And it was like, yes, we can absolutely do that. And this is a much more reasonable, simplified script. So I feel like what I got out of Magic School AI was a lot more actionable once I gave it the prompt that gave me the actionable thing.
Okay, so the prompting helped. And I wondered too, Gareth, do you think maybe you had a more targeted task in Magic School
Mhm.
AI? Seems that way to me.
Yeah, I think that once I was like, okay, I need this to be like a scripted activity. I need that script to be the thing that students can actually use. Um, some of the ideas are, I believe that I got out um, of Gemini. I think it was with an earlier example. Yeah, it was this one. It brought out tools and pictures and it recommended using different things to help prompt the activities so that you could just like show a picture of a tool and elicit a response. So it tried to do that, which I think that's a good approach. That is useful, but it was once I knew how to start prompting Magic School AI, it just more easily gave me something I can take into a classroom.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing. Put any questions you have for Gareth in the chat. I think you have all given me the perfect segue into why it's important to evaluate the outputs that we generate with AI, because as we saw with each of those examples, and really with, many, many, many examples we could pull from, it's not perfect, and a lot of what I hear from teachers all the time is that it's a good starting point and that it's good inspiration, that sometimes they go with one task in mind and actually the AI does something they didn't really ask it to do, but it actually gave them a good idea to try that. So I think, yeah, it's really important to think about, are we getting what we want? Are we getting a good starting point? And then what comes after that starting point, which is the evaluation process, where we as educators have to think about what a quality learning material would be for our students. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into these different aspects of quality educational resources and how they relate specifically to AI, starting with credibility. And so one of the things that we need to be looking for in terms of credibility, specifically with AI tools, is the expression of bias that is baked into AI. So you're seeing here the results of a study that was run on how AI depicts different people in different jobs. So bus driver, carpenter, fitness instructor, pilot, scientist, and security guard. And this paper kind of explains how AI was showing bias, or, showing a very specific and narrow perspective of who might fill these different occupations and doing it over and over again. I agree. This scientist is a little scary looking. So we know that AI has baked in bias, and it's important, of course, as educators to think about in the images that we generate using AI, how can we represent the diversity of our learners, and even in the stories and the reading passages that may be more text-based, and maybe it's not as blatantly clear to us where the bias is. How can we look closer and find those limitations? Also, we know that AI is not always accurate. So you have probably heard of this in many different news stories about AI messing up in its accuracy and causing problems. So we know that AI is confused about what is fact and what is fiction, and can really be convinced to express a lot of things as fact. It would be nice if the output prompt users to select to keep the original formatting automatically to force. Okay. Carolyn, I would like to hear more on that. I want you guys to look at this picture that I generated using AI. I want you to guess what prompt that I used to generate this image. It was one word that I used in an image generator. Can anybody guess what the one word was? Flower, Gareth said. Any other guesses? Create. Grasshopper. And grasshopper is actually a great guess. It's far more on point than what I actually said, which was facts. And my only prompt was facts. And it's just, I think this is a great visual depiction of how AI takes what, we prompt it to do, and it takes all the information that's working with, and it tries really hard to get to what we want, but it's not actually in touch with reality. So yes, this was AI's visual representation of facts. I don't know. Yeah, isn't that funny? The other thing we want to think about this time in terms of relevance is that AI is an adult educator. And Gareth brought this up earlier about Magic School having, all of these options for grade, except adult literacy is not there. And so we have to remember that the data that goes into the systems, and even our prompts, can affect, of course, the output. And so when we talk about credibility, and even when we talk about relevance, there are interventions that we can have when we have a better prompt to compensate for where the data may have been lacking or may have been biased. So we want to make sure to check AI generated content for credibility and relevance, especially in the areas of accuracy, cultural sensitivity, and with relevance, thinking about adult learners, the learner audience, and the context of the learning, and making sure that if we can't rely on AI to give us something perfectly targeted toward our audience, that we know how to compensate for that in our edits or in our prompting. So Jeff is now, we're going to move into considering usability. So if we're thinking about credibility and relevance of the content, then when we think about how we package that content and deliver it to learners, there are other criteria that we need to consider. And the out-of-the-box tools that exist can be really helpful in getting us closer to a point where we can deliver things to learners. So Brisk, for example, that edits right in a document. Denise showed us Diffit that got her into that nicely formatted worksheet format. So some of these out-of-the-box tools, teacher tools, can get us closer to something that is more ready to use than something like a chatbot. But they're not, again, they're still not perfect, and there still requires that evaluation. So I'm going to hand it over to Jeff, who's going to talk about how we design activities that are ready to go for learners.
This is an active chat, and I'm loving it. Um, Matthew, I love that you got rickrolled by Gemini. That's amazing. That must be like a built-in feature. All right, so as Rachel said, we were looking, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen yet, am I? What we've been looking at are your outputs, and it's great that actually Denise and Gareth both had examples and were showing some things that were generated by these out-of-the-box tools, and that we even talked about before Rachel started talking about credibility and relevance, that there are lots of things that are problematic with those tools, but with a keen eye towards the things that we know might be problematic, we can overcome those and have a finalized output that is in line with what we are looking to do. What we're going to talk about now for this next section is thinking about, you've been generating activities. The first activity we asked you to generate some problems. At the end of the day, as you even saw in Austin's example, is you have this output that is in a chat thread if you're using one of the chat bots in one of these tools. You have to put it somewhere in order to get it into the hands of students. And so what we want to think about, looking back at what you've already done, or even maybe the first two sessions, you've just been really in experimentation mode and haven't necessarily been building towards something. What should we be thinking about when we're prompting to generate the content for the activities that we want to generate and use with students? And then what also should we be thinking about in terms of how we're actually going to be using these ultimate outputs with our learners? And so the first thing, obviously, we want to think about, and this is something that you did in session 1, was what is the content and the goal for learning? So you might be using Texas learning standards or digital literacy standards or industry-specific standards, or something that is the target, it's the objective, if you will, of what you want students to be able to do by the time they've completed the activity that you're creating. And then within that, then, how are students, or what are students going to be doing in the particular activity that you're generating? So maybe you are generating some reading passages or conversations for learners that are at level and that are around a particular topic or concept. So they are talking, or they're reading, or maybe they're writing or researching, or doing something, some different modality as part of the learning process. And then in thinking about the third step of that is, okay, you have this output that gives you these activity ideas or suggestions or prompts or problems. So how will you be transferring that into the hands of students? So what will they be doing with the activity that you've been generating? How are you going to take it and put it into the hands of learners? So maybe you actually want to do something in a more ed tech version, and it could be in-person conversation where they're just reading off of a paper, or maybe they're actually doing something using messaging tools, or even using text-to-speech, using a phone that allows you to actually give them some speaking practice that might be independent, or even digital skills practice using those tools. It could be writing on paper, or it could be writing using a word processing tool with a prompt that is available to them, or it could be some sort of interactive comprehension check using some sort of quizzing tool that allows you to take the problems that you created, put it into something that learners can actually engage with, answer questions, get feedback, and then you, as the teacher, can get their results aggregated in one place, which is a great benefit to both you and the learner. It simplifies that process of data collection or reviewing students' answers. So these are all things that we're going to look at now, and we're going to do so looking at a set of activities that Rachel generated using ChatGPT. So let's look at this prompt. And so here's the prompt that Rachel created. I'm not going to read it out loud. I'll give you a second to just start reading it, but the gist of it is developing a dialogue to be used in an intermediate ESL class, and they're developing foundational digital literacy. They want to learn more about computers. They want to enjoy activities that allow them to interact during class time. She provides an example curriculum to see examples of the types of dialogues that are appropriate. And then she provides details regarding the types of the versions of the dialogue that she wants ChatGPT to generate. So now thinking about those 3 steps that I talked about in the previous slide, she used some supporting resources and she added these as excuse me, attachments to her prompt. But the first thing was thinking about what is the target or the objective or the goal for the activity. And so she provides extensive detail at the start of her prompt, and she does so based on the Texas standards, so demonstrate appropriate speaking skills and strategies for seeking and relaying information. And as noted, she added an attachment that included an example of sample dialogues that are appropriate for the level that she was hoping to build these activities for. The second step in terms of her guidance here in the prompt was describing what learners would be doing. So what would the activity actually entail? So exchanges in the dialogue with 5 exchanges where the user is using WH questions, so what, why, and that is also informed by the standards here on the right. So this is one of the benchmarks for low intermediate, is engaging in simple conversations using these questions. And then finally, she provides guidance in terms of the format. Like, what is this actually going to look like in terms of the activity that gets generated? Rachel, do you have the link? Sorry, I meant to add the link to the to your thread. If we can share that in the chat.
Yeah.
Well, this way you can read it in more detail, but you'll be able to get the gist of what it generated on the next screen. So again, it really is dependent on the level of detail that you put in terms of what kind of output you're going to get. So she provides details on the target objectives and goals, who the learner levels are. She gives examples so that it has something to model what it generates off of. And she puts some detail into the type of activities that she wants. So full dialogue, one that includes blanks for key vocabulary, and one that includes blanks so that learners can write the questions, the what and why questions. So those were the inputs. And with that final one, it's going to give these outputs, and then it's up to us, the teacher, to say, okay, what do we want to do with that output in terms of getting these into the hands of learners? So this is a discussion to be had in the next slide. So let's look at what her outputs were. In thinking about what will students be doing and how will they be doing, I'm going to look at the 3 different examples that she prompted ChatGPT to generate, and raise your hand or just come off mute and indicate what would you do with this activity in terms of taking it and putting it into the hands of learners. So the first is the full dialogue. So this is all of this dialogue with at least 5 interactions where the user is asking what or why questions to an IT specialist that you're having trouble with the computer. So here's the dialogue. ChatGPT generated this. So how would you get this into the hands of students, and what would you ask them to do with it? Go ahead, raise your hand, or just unmute or chat. Anything is an option here. So what would you do with this output? I see Denise is unmuted, but I don't know that she knows she's unmuted. I was hoping she was going to have a...
Oh, sorry.
That's
I was
okay.
thinking, well, one thing I was going to ask you actually, what I was thinking about, and I've looked for myself, is there anything that will automatically do a dialogue recording? You can record, like in Google, I've done it before with, you record the whole thing, but I do a lot of dialogues, and it's like, it would be not, if you know of anything where it could automatically record in 2 different voices to make a dialogue or something like this.
You mean just to make the audio, Denise?
Yeah, but with the 2 different voices automatically, because I've had to do it by hand where I, but I don't know. I haven't found anything. If you find anything, let me know.
I know to put voice to text, a lot of teachers use natural readers. So I think you would maybe have to like do that a couple of times with different voices to do the
That's what I've
dialogue
done.
part.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't sound very
I just wanted
natural
to do
anymore.
it. It's AI. I want it to do it for me.
Right.
So I don't have to do it a couple of times.
Now, right?
So Gareth, yeah, that's a
Okay,
good
there you
point.
are.
Yeah, assume, Gareth, that you've already done the evaluating for relevance and for
Mhm.
that it's set.
Mhm.
So Adriana, yes, just printing it, right? So you could print it out or put it into a document and print it out, but then you've got your stored version, and then it is a physical piece of paper that students are reading. That's a great use of it, but you've transferred it into something. And in thinking about moving it to something like a Google Doc, that's something you could share with other teachers or other instructors in your program so that they have those options too. First, I would read through to see. So using the pro version of Magic School AI, which would actually generate some activities for you. If there are questions for understanding vocabulary, then you could have them identify the question words. Okay. Um, have them read through, see if there are questions. Oh, have them read through together. Okay, I think that's what you're saying. Great. Gareth, split it up so each side has their own side's words and they have to talk to each other. Yep. Questions with activities using Diffit. Okay. I'm going to go to the second version. So now Rachel created an activity, a dialogue with blanks for key vocabulary and for the WH questions. So what would you do with this? Give them a word bank, so maybe add a word bank or the words that they need to fill and fill in the blanks. So okay, that is what they could be doing. How would you do that? What would the tool be that you would actually share that with? And this doesn't have to be just Gareth. Anyone can piggyback off of his activity idea. Any thoughts?
I do that all the time. Um, I do those, I take content
Mm-hmm.
and I upload the content, or I use a URL link to the content, and then I request to generate a worksheet. And I want it to be fill in the blank. I can choose that, or it'll do a mixed mode where it decides itself based on the content. And so if it's paragraph, then it will decide to put it in a fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
They throw in a couple of multiple choices. I mean, I do that all the time because I do
Right.
credit. So I have to kind of realize I'm dealing with 15 and 16-year-olds,
Yeah.
and I take content, and they're used to getting things in worksheets like that.
Yep. And then I see Denise, that's a great point. You could then take this output, put it into ChatGPT, and Denise is a great example. She mentions that she uses this to create cloze exercises, and she'll give an example of how she wants the word bank formatted so that then it's actually generating something that's more akin to a worksheet. Pasting it into Word is a great example. Again, that's a very easy, basic, and it's something that you can do online, or if if you want to build in like little fill in the blanks that students could actually type into a Word document, they could do. That's another option. And then I guess in a similar manner, the dialogue with blanks just for the what and why questions, that could also be similar to what we just talked about for that. So rather than continuing with that, I'm going to move on just for the sake of time. So I'm going to hop into a Padlet so that we can walk through some examples of what Rachel and I generated with this. And I'm going to share this link in the chat. And if you can all jump in here, because this is what we're going to use actually for the rest of the session. And if you choose to go with me towards the end in the breakout room and do further exploration with EdTech tools, we will use that time to hop in. So the resource evaluation guide is here on the left, and I'm going to click and open it. I think I'm going to click and open it. Why is it not clicking and opening? I think it maybe it's froze it. Ah, this was linked, I swear. Suddenly it is not. I'm like clicking furiously. Okay, let me go back to the resource evaluation guide.
Well, you
Sorry about
found
that.
another problem with this.
I'm going to paste the link to the guide in the chat as well, and I'll make sure to add it back. And then I'm also going to open it up. So the three other criteria or categories of criteria in the evaluation guide are learning and support features, which is thinking about how are learners actually using it and what is the engagement, and is there enough support for learners to know what it is they're supposed to do with an activity that we've designed. The second category is ease of use, and this gets into accessibility considerations. So is it understandable? Is it operable in terms of learners being able to use it based on the devices that they might have access to? Is it understandable? And then openness. So Rachel and I do a lot of work with open education resources, and what we believe to be true is that when we are designing activities for our classroom, why not design it in such a way that other teachers could benefit from that? And so making sure that, first of all, that you have the permission to use the content that you are using in your activity, but also making sure that it's open technologically speaking, meaning others could make copies of it and adapt it for their own use. And ideally that it's using free tools that allow you and others to use it without having to pay. These are ideals, they're not necessarily always the case, but these are three things that we look at when we're thinking about the usability of resources that we create and share with other teachers. Thank you for adding that note, whoever did that. So we're going to look at three different examples, and I can just click on this, Rachel. Do you want me to just open it? And...
Yeah, sure. I'll
All right.
I'll kind of talk through it. So my first one that I made was Google Slides, because a lot of times I would, if I was synchronous in a Zoom meeting or in person, start off a role play with some slides that kind of got them primed on filling the roles and having a good example, using the target language. So in my slides example, I also wanted to think about differentiations, and since that was our focus, and how would I really have learners on a parallel path, but maybe in a topic that they might find more interesting to them. So I had generated the two dialogues, the one with the tech support and the one with the tax preparer, and created these slides where I could first show learners kind of the flow of starting with reading the conversation, and then on the next one, they drag the question words into the sentences. And then finally, the idea is for them to be able to write another conversation that they would then practice with a partner. So this was my idea for, if I was maybe in a synchronous setting, and could project this and show them how to do those different steps. And then,
Well, actually, in thinking
oh yeah,
about
yeah,
those
sorry.
three, and Denise, I see your note. I'll share it again right here. Here's the evaluation guide. So thinking about what learning and support, what might be needed for that activity, how easy is it to use, how open is it? Just add any comments you have or thoughts you have regarding the activity that Rachel just shared using the sticky notes here on the right. I'll give you about 1 minute for that.
I don't know what he's asking us to do.
Or use, yep, text works too.
Could you
Mhm.
explain what you asking?
Just grab a sticky note over on the toolbar on the right,
Mm-hmm.
and then think about what learning and support features did those slides have? What was the ease of use like? So how accessible are those? And then finally, how open are they for people to access and adapt them?
Am I supposed to be doing this in one of these tabs that I can't see? Just more card actions.
We shared a Padlet that has these that I'm sharing my screen right now, and we're all in activity 1.
Okay.
And I can reshare the Padlet here. I'll do it directly so that to you, Dr. French.
Mhm.
There we go. All right, you should have a chat. Okay, so small level of engagement with dragging and entering text, and needing to actually understand how to do that is one thing. So there does need to be guidance. Also, just note that the activities that Rachel and I have designed, we consider these to be things that we could do on a regular basis with the same kind of activity format on a regular basis. Like our goal when we also design EdTech activities is to consider what routines that we could use, so that it's not every single time a learner is engaging with it, they have to learn how to do a new set of things, but it's something that's part of their regular practice. These are great. So minimal scaffolding, jumps into big conversation. ESL students would have difficulty maybe at the start, but after a few times, again, in modeling how to use these tools, could do that. Gradual release. Oh, someone actually literally just said what I said. Scaffolding with full and then gradual release. Okay, great. We're going to move on to the second activity example, and this is a flipped lesson.
So in this one, I was thinking more about what could I give learners to do asynchronously, and then they would come to class more prepared to do the role play. And so it has a video about with the WH questions, still has the differentiation, so they can still choose the topic that they're interested in and get the same language exercises in each one. I really was, the more I worked with these dialogues that were AI generated, the more pleased I was. So like one thing I noticed as I was setting up the Google form is that each of these questions, the question word in the order of the dialogue is the same for both dialogues, the tech support and the tax preparer, which I didn't even think to ask it to do, but it did make it easier on me as a teacher to know, when they were using what, first here and first there. Anyway, so I was pleased with that. And so I set this up for them to be able to see their score at the end, read the dialogue, select the questions, and then write on paper a new conversation that they would bring to class. So again, really thinking about like, what can they do asynchronously, get feedback on, and then have something that they are ready to do in class together.
All right. So I see people feedback is immediate. That is a great support feature and a real benefit of using a tool like Google Forms, because of the fact that you could do that same thing in paper and pencil or in a Google Doc, but this way students can actually do it outside of class and they get that feedback. Content seems consistent, low distraction. Forms are very clean. There's not a lot of distraction. There's no ads. That's a really great point as well. I'll let you continue there. I'm just going to go quickly to a third example. So I wanted to give them speaking practice. And one thing that I know you can do, and I see lots of people do on their phones, but it's also something that you can do in Google Docs, is text or speech to text. And so what I designed was this activity here that has directions on how to do this. And again, my thought here is that learners, this would be something that you model with students, you do repeatedly with different conversations, but having some sort of setup where it's taking the conversation, and then I want them to actually be asking the questions and having practice speaking it. And so we'll see if this works, because my link in Padlet didn't work a second ago. But what they can do is they can click into these boxes, and then if they hit Control-Shift-S, this is a shortcut in Google Docs, but if I hit Control-Shift-S, it's going to turn on speech to text. So I could do that. Why is my computer running so slowly? And it gives you the opportunity to speak, and basically it's kind of verifying whether you're speaking the words clearly and speaking it correctly, by way of it actually typing it up correctly. So again, this takes some guidance, but at the end of the day, this is a shortcut that they can use, that you could actually give them any sort of prompt in some sort of way, and then have them speak and have them get feedback by way of how it actually types out the answer. So that was the third example. So interested in hearing what your feedback is on the learning and support features, the ease of use, and the openness. Now note, this Padlet is something that's going to be linked in your workbook. This Padlet is something that's linked in the slides. So you're going to be able to come back to this and open up any of these examples if you want to look back at them for inspiration as things that you use to design your own activities. Cool. All right, so moving on, because we are running short on time and we do want to provide some time for breakouts. Where'd we go? Sorry. And actually, all of these examples are linked in the slides as well. I meant to make note of that. So today we've looked at the outputs that were generated out of session 2, and we even saw some examples of people who have taken those outputs and used some of these out of the box tools to generate their own activities. So what we're going to be asking you to do as part of your session 3, and this is leading up to our showcase, which is on April 9th, is to design an activity that is aligned to one of the standards that you teach and has content that's generated in part or full using AI tools. So we've seen a whole smattering of different examples, from just math problems to conversations to a template for designing and writing resumes and cover letters. So there's lots of different variety that we've seen in terms of the objectives of what the activity is. And all of them have leveraged generative AI to either create the content from scratch or to adapt something, as Denise's example, for leveling for her students. So those are the 2 steps, and those incorporate everything and all of the tasks that we included as part of your homework in sessions 1 and session 2. So it may be that you've actually been working towards and building towards a particular activity that you have in mind, or maybe you use session 1 and session 2 to just experiment and play around. So now it's time to think through, what is something that I want to teach and how do I want to teach it, and then generating an output using one of the tools that we've been experimenting with. And then transferring that into some sort of ed tech tool. So even if you've used Magic School Bus or Diffit or something like that, that's actually doing that activity generation and is automated, how are you actually delivering this to your students? And then finally, we're going to be sharing with you an activity design checklist that basically takes all of those categories that we were looking at in the evaluation tool checklist and puts them into practice as you think about and evaluate your own activity creation, just to make sure you're considering the usability, the ease of use, making sure that the content is credible and relevant to learners, and that it's things such as accessible and ideally open, so that others could actually take what you've created and use it or adapt it to suit their contexts. So in your workbooks, we're going to be adding the session 3 activity this evening, so it'll be ready for you in the morning. But what it will do is walk you through that sort of sequence of questions, the strategy for designing an activity and thinking about the content, what students will be doing and how they'll be doing it. There are examples of the types of things students are doing, what types of activities that might lend themselves to, and some ed tech tool examples. Within the workbook, you're going to see 2 different sites that you can go to explore ed tech tools. It may very well be that you already have something in mind, but these are just great resources in general. One is this Top Tools for Learning, which is an annual set of tools that is aggregated through a survey of educators and then organized based on how these different tools are used. We're also going to share what's called the EdTech Integration Strategy Toolkit, which has a set of routines that provide activity ideas that you can do on a regular basis, such as the things that Rachel and I shared in our examples. And then you're going to create your activity. So there's a checklist for you to basically think through, have you done all of the steps related to making sure that it's credible, that your activity has a title, that it's relevant to adult learner context, which may be one of the main things that you're doing with your generative AI tool, is to make sure that it actually is relevant for learners, something that exists in another form and making it more adult ed friendly and relevant. That it's scaffolded and supports learners and provides for meaningful engagement, and ideally that it's open and reusable, as I mentioned earlier. And what we're going to be doing that's different than in the previous sessions is we want you to actually share the link to your activity and these details in a shared Google Sheet. So this will be something that is at the end of your workbook. So once you're ready to add your activity here, it's really important you do this because that will be our signal that you're done, and then we can take a look at it and provide you feedback in advance of session 4 on April 9th. All right. Rachel, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's good that we're here now. We have about 10 minutes. And I think Jeff and I can both stay a little later too, if the breakouts go long. But yeah, we have 2 rooms, and I think those of you that want to get caught up, well, Jeff, yeah, you go ahead, tell us what the rooms are for.
Well, first is a question from Carolyn. What's your can you explain the access feature
Well,
for
Jeff, actually, can I pause you for a second?
yeah,
Because I think if for people getting caught up, come to my room, I could help you access the workbooks. I think
got
that's a
it.
good
Perfect.
room
Yeah. Okay.
2 question. So, Caroline, come to room 2. I'm gonna help you with that, okay?
Okay. So the reason we're both hiding our faces is Bitmoji, which is our favorite tool in the world for having fun characters, because we are boring in theory, but when we add cartoon versions of ourselves, it's fun, right? And they changed to make them 3-dimensional, and we don't like the new look, so I'm hiding my face, and Rachel's just mad. So we're gonna have breakout rooms for the remainder. My room is going to be deeper exploration of selecting or designing an activity and EdTech tool exploration. And this is more along the lines of if you want to actually create something using tools that you already use or like using with your students, as opposed to taking something and having Diffit or other ones just automatically generate the activities for you. If you want to move to room 2, this is an opportunity to go with Rachel and to work more on the activities or clarify what was asked for, what needed to be done for sections 1 and 2 activities, as well as a deeper exploration of AI tools in general. And again, this is for the remainder of this. We both can stay later if needed. A reminder to myself and to you, Rachel, to record when we go into the breakouts.